Chapter 10. Life at the Edge of the World. LaVey truly lives in the devil's realm, in that misty borderland between sanity and madness, acceptability and outrage, between science and the supernatural. Yet remains always, as one associate puts it, beyond the pale. LaVey maintains it's only in his borderland. It's only in this borderland of all times and no times, with spatial and chronological reference points suspended, that magic is initiated, and the magician's will can be projected outward to superimpose his desires on the is-to-be. Everyone's looking for independence now. Identities are at a premium, a precious commodity. The common man is sold individuality with every beer ad or shoe commercial. Only by isolating yourself as completely as you can from the mainstream can you accomplish real magic, says LaVey. There's great power in doing something that, at that moment in time, there is probably no one else in the world doing. If you listen to a piece of music that everyone was humming once, but which has been neglected over the years, you're doing something unique, gaining energy from that lost song. That's the power of exclusivity. When you do something that few others even think of doing, you shine forth like a beacon. If there are forces which can carry out your bidding, you would attract their attention and sympathy through your uniqueness. LaVey himself lives an inverted life. True to his vampiric nature, he slips off to bed near dawn, doing his best work in the hours shortly before sunrise. He's isolated himself from media events and tabloid personalities, depending on a satellite system of associates around the world to give him a filtered sketch of pertinent information. In the last few years, LaVey has initiated a campaign against the mind-numbing effects of television, reasoning that if exclusivity is a potent magical tool, nothing can be accomplished by staring into a tube that measures its audiences in millions. He's labeled TV the Great Stratifier, likening it to God in its omnipresence and universal standardization. In previous centuries, LaVey writes, the church was the great controller, dictating morality, stifling free expression, and posing as a conservator of all great art and music. Instead, we have TV, doing just as good a job at dictating fashions, thoughts, attitudes, objectives, as did the church, using many of the same techniques, doing it so palatably that no one notices. Instead of sins to keep people in line, we have fears of being judged unacceptable by our peers. By not wearing right shoes, not drinking the right kind of beer, or wearing the wrong kind of deodorant. Coupled with that fear is imposed insecurity concerning our own identities. All answers and solutions to these fears come through television, and only through television. Only through exposure to TV can the new sins of alienation and ostracism be absolved. Satanists, by LaVey's definition, are those rare individuals who, among other things, natively avoid contact with masses of people, whether in thought, dress, taste in music, entertainment, or automobiles. When reviewing an applicant's file for possible further involvement in the Church of Satan, LaVey looks closely at the person's unconscious alignment with media issues and personalities. He makes a distinction between born iconoclasts and media-saturated rebels who only dress or act out shocking behavior because they want to be accepted by another peer group. LaVey uses factors like disdain for television and favorite movies, books, and jokes as a gauge for determining the depths of one's satanic alignments. A major determining factor by which a superior human can be isolated from his average counterparts is his very isolation. The degree to which he naturally removes himself from mass media input and stimuli. You cannot be an elitist, a magician, and be plugged into the system. One issue of the Cloven Hoof contained a tightly written bombshell of disdain titled Misanthropia. In language comparable to that used in the Satanic Bible, though matured, LaVey begins by saying, "A long time ago I tried to be a full-time, dear fellow sweet guy. I should have known better." From there he goes on. "There are countless books I wish to read, musical compositions I would like to play and listen to, objects I would like to create, paintings and drawings I would like to render. Undesirable men and women rob me of those opportunities." LaVey has little charity when it comes to aiding the less fortunate of the world. People don't realize they take their lives in their hands when they talk to me about helping the starving and downtrodden and homeless. "My fellow man," says LaVey. "I consider that a most ignoble endeavor. The only way I would like to help the great majority of people is the same way Karl Panzram reformed people who tried to reform him. It would be most merciful to help them by relieving them of the life they seem to hate so much. People should be happy I'm not a humanitarian, or I'd probably be the most diabolical mass murderer the world has ever known." Perhaps it is just this callousness toward human beings that allows LaVey to align himself more closely with animals, and to value inanimate objects much more highly than humans. On the last page of Arthur Lyons' book, Satan Wants You, LaVey describes the real threat of Satanism. Like an old Duesenberg sitting at the curb is more alive than the people crowding around it, drawing energy from its beautiful chrome pipes. The object will become more valuable than the people watching it. When things become precious and people expendable, that is the horror of the true satanic society. That is when the nightmare begins. LaVey cherishes and preserves orphan items. Books, sheet music, clothes, movies, memorabilia. Much of his extensive collection is contained in a storeroom far below one of his homes, a place best left to the imagination, monstrous not in size but in content. His purpose is not only indulgence, but also saving obscure bits of history that might otherwise be lost forever. Here's to the conservators. They provide the world with a memory. Among LaVey's treasured icons of bygone eras are lost or banned songs, like a collection of gloomy Sunday recordings he inherited from an early member of the church. Because of LaVey's perverse reverence for inanimate objects, he seems more influenced by the written word and movies than by real people. Just as he has always adopted ideas others shy away from, LaVey admits to being fascinated with houses dangerously close to elevated freeways, beyond the pavement's end, precariously perched on stilts, houses literally on the fringes that others wouldn't feel comfortable residing in. Antique or unusual cars, sleazy paperbacks, pulp magazines. LaVey is a collector of bizarrerie, that others overlook, cast aside, or shun as disturbing or disgusting. People are envious only when his orphaned items, or ideas for that matter, become monetarily valuable. Then the unscrupulous but ever-present few will try to abscond with what he's preserved, even if it takes court action. Perhaps it's directly because of LaVey's adoration of unique items that things have taken from him, or lost, often return after many years. He seems to be a vortex for rare books, which he regards as physical entities that preserve and communicate our past. All books are treated with extreme care, to the point that even many longtime friends are discouraged from touching them. A sign posted in a section of his extensive library declares, "Anyone caught removing books from these shelves will have their hands amputated. Something always happens when people mistreat these books," LaVey warns, gesturing to the shelves filled behind him, almost as if they're living entities. If someone hurts them, I find out the person later met with some tragedy. LaVey's keyboards seem to have the same effect on people. LaVey is a private man. He has few people he involves closely in his life. If someone intrudes in LaVey's private domain uninvited, or sullies the atmosphere when he is granted inclusion, the intruder can blame no one but himself for the harm that befalls him. Yet, in his perverse way, Anton LaVey preserves our memories for us, treasures them, and keeps them alive and fresh. Everyone tells us the past is impossible, even worthless, to experience again. LaVey, in contrast, encourages his followers to live in a world of their own choosing, their own making. Going back in time to experience worlds you missed, or returning to a time that once gave you vitality, isn't an option in LaVeyan thought. It's a necessity. It's not a crime to wish for other worlds. You'll get taxed for it, but they can't throw you in jail for creating your own private world. Yet. Dramatics are fun, an indulgence. You can't go backward. You can't live in the past, they tell you. Why not? You've got to put all that behind you and move on to other things, they say. Bullshit. These are all expressions of modern disposability. It's a mediocratizing technique, trying to get rid of what I call past orthodoxies. It's our past that makes us unique. Therefore, it's our past that economic interests want to rob from us so they can sell us a new, improved future. Society now depends on a disposable world. Out with the old, in with the new, including relationships. But how we weep and wish we could hold on to those cherished moments forever, to those long whispered dreams, those tortured thoughts. How we want to grasp them and stop them from sifting through our fingers. I say, don't let it happen. Keep things the way you want them and let the rest of the world be duped. But LaVey's advocacy of chosen total environments goes beyond simple entertainment. Evoking certain periods with appropriate music, clothing styles, manners, and patterns of speech that have been abandoned can give a would-be magician unparalleled power. LaVey has a theory that it even can increase longevity if a person is allowed to remain in exactly the era that is most pleasurable to him. Perhaps time can be suspended. LaVey himself hasn't seemed to age over the last 20 years. In fact, his ideas remained what they were when he was 10 years old. He has just found avenues to flesh them out more completely. and he stays in the world that makes him happy. Total environments can be an expression of unique knowledge. Secrets you might be privy to, which makes the environment all the more magical. Satan has always been a keeper of secrets, and LaVey has described secrecy as a process of empowerment in itself. A secret organization is secret not to preserve a given body of information per se, but to gain power from having and transmitting secrets to its members. The process of learning, and more importantly, keeping hidden information, gives you power. If you just tell someone a secret, they won't learn a thing. A stage magician can show how a trick is done, but he can't teach all the years of skill and practice it has taken to learn how to do that particular trick in a few short minutes. Holding secrets about other people, sometimes what they can't even tell themselves, is like being the keeper to the gates of hell. LaVey sympathizes with the fortune teller Apollonius in a novel by Charles Finney, The Circus of Dr. Lau. When a lonely older woman comes into his tent, hungry to hear that she'd soon meet a handsome man, or begin an adventure, Apollonius is compelled to tell her, "Tomorrow will be like today, and day after tomorrow will be like the day before yesterday. I see your remaining days, each as quiet, tedious collections of hours. You will not travel anywhere. You will think no new thoughts. You will experience no new passions. When you die, you will be buried and forgotten, and that is all. And for all the good or evil, creation or destruction, that your living might have accomplished, you might just as well never have lived at all." I can't tell people what I really think. Like Apollonius, I have a loaded gun. What I see in people is truthful, but it's concerted cruelty to hold a big mirror up to people. I don't have it in me to use it in a cavalier manner. I can't tell people what would devastate them. It might be better, less stressful for me if I could, but I hold back. It's different when it comes from me. I and I alone can allow them to feel content, even satisfied with the very imperfections that others would stigmatize. Likewise, I and I alone can make people feel devastated if I point out the same imperfections others might point out. If you have that ability, you don't put your perceptions forth often. You know what one word could do. It's a tool you don't use unless you intend to destroy, like a curse. I don't even like to think such thoughts about certain people. It's dangerous, coming from me. Cursing people with themselves is the worst curse of all. He often admires in people that which others would consider stigmatizing. One of the strengths of Satanic philosophy is to take that in yourself which would be considered by most to be a liability and invert it. Make it work for you rather than against you. Perhaps this is where the image of Satanic inversion holds true. An accomplished Satanist takes what is considered evil by mainstream Judeo-Christian society, turns it upside down in unexpected ways, and gives it back in spades. By applying LaVey's rule of 9 parts social respectability to 1 part outrage, Satan, church, religion, Bible must all be redefined in the post-1966 era. LaVey advises, to be really outrageous, make your alienation work for you. Use their own fears against them. Take the givens and throw it back at your accusers so they get more than they bargained for. The difference between me and someone like Manson is he's playing poker and they're playing poker, but I'm playing blackjack. Maybe that's not what he wants to play, but that's how it worked out. I'm playing a totally different game than they are, with the hand they dealt me. Using what they give me, implementing them in a way they don't expect and don't like. Visuals, music, archetypes. They deal you stress, and I give them real distress. It's all in the application. Endowing stereotypes, endorsing what people say Satanists do, according to Christian definitions, sacrificing animals, killing people, stealing, destroying property, criminal behavior, is endowing and empowering the system. You're playing the game right. That's actually an acceptable option in the Judeo-Christian framework. To be a criminal. You're no threat behind bars. You could be safely locked up so they can poke sticks at you. They get you stress, and you get distress. That's not satanic. Instead, LaVey instructs his witches and warlocks to develop unique competence and skill in one thing. Develop something you're very good at so you can transcend the consciousness of it. Learn to play the oboe, or build a model city from scratch, or learn to draw a horse that looks like a horse. When you learn a skill and claim it as uniquely your own realm, with endless practice, you'll be able to do it so well you won't even have to think about it. That's magical meditation, trances, out-of-body experiences, the magician standing in the middle of the circle and pronouncing the words he alone knows, the use of magician's tools. All the metaphors are there. This is applicable to music or magic, says LaVey. When it becomes a form of expression, that's when the autopilot takes over and the medium becomes incidental. I lose consciousness of the methods or tools. Once you familiarize yourself with your tools, you should forget about them. It will only throw you off balance. And all these rolling shit into little balls types who spend hours of times and reams of paper saying nothing, literary masturbators, they concentrate on the vehicle more than what they want to produce. That impedes the end result and defeats the purpose. You must lose consciousness of the medium or mechanics to do the impossible. Like Nijinsky, who explained how he gave the impression of hovering in midair. I just pause when I get up there. In a childlike way, real magicians innocently do the simplest thing. The objective is all they think about. I just want to make music the way I hear it. The ends justify the means, and the means become inconsequential. LaVey uses various forms of artistic expression to evoke his creative demons. Though he has written a few rousing songs and done some soundtracks, his passion so far has been in dynamically interpreting music already written but long neglected. Only recently has LaVey agreed to release some of his musical compositions and interpretations to a wider audience. LaVey has also managed over the years to turn out some rather startling paintings and photographs. At a time when only Charles Addams and the artists for Weird Tales were doing their darkly wicked work, LaVey painted and exhibited some delightfully eerie paintings. His artwork is bleak, with figures haunting and haunted. Also primitive in their stark concentration of timeless, suspended focus, A few have had to be removed from their exhibition spots because they were too disturbing. The same quality can be found in his photography. Lonely, dismal scenes that would only appeal to grisly, perverse appetites. LaVey explains the power of alienation, finding interest in things most dismiss as old or insignificant. Something that once had importance might be forgotten by most people, but because millions of people once knew it, a force is present that can be harnessed. There might be so much significance attached to a song, for example, or a fact, that it can't die, but only lies dormant, like a vampire in his coffin, waiting to be called forth from the grave once again. There is more magic in the fact that the first mass worldwide photo of the Church of Satan was taken by Joe Rosenthal, the same man who took the same famous news photo in history, the flag raising at Iwo Jima. There's real occult significance to that, much more than in memorizing grimoires and witches' alphabets. People ask me about what music to use in rituals. What is the best occult music? I've instructed people to go to the most uncrowded section of the music store, and it's a guarantee that you'll find there what will be occult music. That's the power of long-lost trivia. I get irritated by people who turn up their noses and whine. Why would anyone want to know that? Because once upon a time, everyone in America knew it. Suppose there's a repository of neglected energy that's been generated and forgotten. Maybe it's like a pressure cooker all this time, just waiting for someone to trigger its release. Here I am. It beckons. I have all this energy stored up just waiting for you. All you have to do is unlock the door. Because of man's cupidity, he's relegated me to the state of somnambulism, dreaming the ancient dreams. Even though I was once so important to him. Think about that. A song that was once on millions of lips now is only on your lips. Now, what does that contain? Those vibrations of that particular tune, what do they evoke? Call up. What do they unlock? The old gods lie dormant, waiting. As a metaphor for alienation to its greatest advantage, LaVey uses the image of the vampire. He started investigations into vampires in 40s and 50s and included the subject in his weekly lectures. Florescu and McNally, In Search of Dracula, and Leonard Woolf, The Annotated Dracula, A Dream of Dracula, contacted LaVey when they first started their projects, since he was the only one doing research on vampires at the time. In 1988, LaVey was called the chief ideologue of modern vampirism by German Tempo magazine. After the Church of Satan got underway, he was invited to host Dracula tours to Transylvania, but he demurred. They wanted him to go as the Devil Man. He used vampire license plates in 1969, and Associate has Nos 4A2, and, of course, coined the term psychic vampire in the Satanic Bible, a phrase that has since found its way into common parlance. When he was doing his Letters to the Devil column in a national tabloid in the late 1960s, LaVey had more than one occasion to explain the traditions surrounding the vampire and the deeper meanings behind them. The drinking of blood has its roots and devouring the love object. Blood or essential salts were nice ways to say sexual secretions, semen or vaginal juices, in the 17th and 18th centuries. Our thirst for metaphorical blood also represents the forbidden, the secret, hidden self, and it shocks because it is forbidden. A secret fascination for vampires becomes more intense with increased technological society. Bloodletters and butchers weren't always looked on with revulsion, just as professionals. Everyone saw blood more. We slaughtered our own livestock, fought wars with swords, saw charnel houses. Anything that's far removed from our everyday experience now becomes more shocking, more compelling. We're protected, insulated. We never see blood in our clean stone and steel, chrome and glass environment. But as we grew further away from the constant confrontation with blood, vampire lore was refined. What we now know as specific vampire characteristics are a relatively recent phenomenon, mostly from Bram Stoker and then Hollywood. LaVey has explained in his articles the reasons why vampires don't look or reflect in mirrors, why native soil, the homeland, is so important. He points to a modern counterpart in RVs, where people want to take their homes with them. What might cause the aversion to garlic and sunlight, and the beneficial effects of the shape of coffins. The closeness and soundlessness is conducive to traveling out on the night. Subsequent research has been done in those directions, which has affirmed much of what LaVey has written. The possibility that people who were once labeled vampires actually suffered from a rare blood disease has been given no small amount of credence. People would like to think of vampires as parasitic. They aren't. True vampires, as opposed to psychic vampires, always have something to offer: immortality. Therefore, a modern true vampire must have a place in society, or must have done something that has conferred immortality on him, so that he can, in turn, pass it on to the victim. Immortality is a metaphor for power. But a true vampiric relationship is never a one-way street. Passion, vitality, is conferred on the vampire's host as well. A vampire doesn't look for an unwilling victim. He can gain significantly more energy from willing victims. Vampires need fresh blood, but of a particular kind. It's a good interchange when it gives the victim a thrill, while the vampire gets the energy from one who's already, 1, enthusiastic, and 2, fetishistically stimulating to the vampire. The victim, in her turn, enjoys the Svengali hold, the unquenchable compulsion, the summoning over long distances, the obsessional dependence on the vampire. A vampire would only pick a deserving, unwilling victim to exercise his sadistic tendencies. Then he'd choose someone often looking for fun, fear, and taunting him for it. The deserving victim would want to gain energy from the vampire by making him hurt her or punish her. You can't draw energy from worthless people. Releasing hostility against them can turn a negative into a positive by providing the vampire with a sense of well-being and calm. When the point comes when it's beyond fun for the taunter and to distress, then it becomes fun for the vampire. Otherwise, it's enervating. Vampires actually get drained by most human interaction. Now that the gates are pretty much open, saying you're a vampire or interested in vampires is one way to get people looking in your direction. But, as is always the case, the people who work at anything the most are the least what they're supposed to be. It's like Satanists who want to get together for lots of group activities. They just want to draw energy from others. True psychic vampires. The people who talk about it aren't really doing it. Sometimes the people who are true vampires, who are involved in vampiric interchanges for mutual benefit, don't even realize it themselves. In the late 50s and early 60s, LaVey developed several files on a real modern vampire, a young man named Robert Hammersley, about whom he has only vaguely alluded. He speaks so eloquently on the subject, one wonders if all his speculation comes merely from his objective research, or if LaVey sees any vampiric tendencies in himself. Not surprisingly, there are a few notable comparisons. LaVey is diagnosed photophobic, has a strong allergic reaction to garlic, and has always maintained peak productivity in a nocturnal sleep pattern. He was sleeping in a coffin long before anyone else thought of it, discovering it had much the same benefit as a sensory deprivation tank. People who work closely to LaVey can attest that he likes the air unbearably cold, finds pleasure in quiet, dark surroundings, and, as any self-respecting vampire would, shuns mainstream culture to create a world of his own. Though LaVey doesn't drink blood, he does need rare red meat. No other protein will do. When asked, LaVey freely admits to the similarities. Yes, in drawing life from energetic people, and shunning the light and reacting to certain foods, like garlic, which contain mitogenic radiation, there are certain common elements of a vampiric personality. In the image of the earth box, as representative of the homeland from which I sprang, my home is very important. I cherish the familiar sights, sounds, smells, which is, again, the opposite of a disposable society. The vampire is a soul doomed to walk through eternity, searching for a lost love, a lost past, a place to light peacefully from those who would hunt him down and kill him for his romantic attempts to recapture the past and live in the splendor of an era long decayed. I am all that is vile, reprehensible, and evil in this world, snorts LaVey. As he wrote in Misanthropia, I will never die, because my death enriches the unfit. I could never be that charitable.